Hey everyone, welcome to the group chat. We are in 2 Kings chapter 22 and 23, and we are talking about King Josiah. He is certainly a bright spot in our Crumble Kingdom series, and there's a really excellent verse in 2 Kings 23 that sums up his reign. It says this about King Josiah. It says, "Before him there was no king like him, who turned to the Lord with all his heart and with all his soul and with all his might, according to all the law of Moses, nor did any like him arise after him." It kind of reminds me of when the religious leaders asked Jesus, what is the greatest commandment? It is to love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your might and with all your soul. And the second is like it, to love your neighbor as yourself. Well, it appears here that well before the time of Jesus, Josiah was fulfilling that. He was living out God's will for his life. And it's crazy. He was living out God's will for his life in a nation that clearly was not honoring God. Let's remember what our big idea was. The remedy to a crumbling soul is what? It's revival. And revival's got to start personally with you. And how do you get there? What's the roadmap to revival? It is turn to the Lord, kill the sin, follow the word. We have seen a cultural shift in our nation, and it's being led by Gen Z. It's being led by our older teens and our young adults. And it's amazing to see what God has done. I talked about this during the message, how many of these young adults and older teenagers, they saw the hopelessness of COVID. They've seen all the fakeness in our world, and they are ready to live for something that is certainly more substantial. It's crazy because that's really what Josiah believed as well. Josiah's great-grandfather was Hezekiah. Hezekiah was godly. He had a son named Manasseh. Manasseh was the worst king ever. Manasseh had a son named Amon. He was also a terrible king. And Amon had a son named Josiah. And it causes us to ask the question, why do some godly parents have ungodly kids, and why do some ungodly parents have godly kids? Well, the truth of the matter is this: every single person, you are responsible for your own faith. Do you want to live a life of revival, on fire for God? Or do you want to live a life of lukewarmness? Or do you want to live a life of wickedness? God's going to give you the choice, and you can choose. Turn to the Lord. The eternal presence of God is better than the temporary pleasure of sin. Do you really believe that? We talked about that in the message, and hopefully you'll have some time to discuss that from your discussion guides. Josiah didn't turn to the right or the left, but he kept his eyes on God. What are some of the ditches that we could get stuck looking at or falling away from? We need to keep our eyes on Jesus, as the writer of Hebrews says, because there are so many other things that can distract us. So first thing we got to do, turn to the Lord. Kill the sin. Josiah didn't just remove the idols. He didn't just donate them to Goodwill. He didn't just sell them at a garage sale or on eBay. He didn't just give them to people that would have wanted them. No, he absolutely pulverized them and destroyed them because he did not want those gods and those idols influencing anyone else. And that is because he loved God and he loved people. And in order to properly love God and love people, well, simply put, you got to kill the sin. You cannot negotiate with your flesh. That's another thing we learned, and hopefully you'll have some time to process and discuss and really meditate on. So we are called to turn to the Lord, kill the sin, and lastly, follow the word. The book of the law had been lost for 57 years. It had been so neglected that no one even realized it was missing. How can God's word become lost in your life? I've heard the phrase a few times where someone has said, I've always wanted revival, but then on Monday morning, I can't even find my Bible. Is that you? In order to have revival, you've got to choose for it to start with you. And it's turning to the Lord. It's killing the sin. And number two, it's following the word. Are you spending time in God's word? I know a lot of people that say, I just want to hear from God. I just want to know God's will. I want to understand God more. And God has literally given us a library of 66 books to read. Turn to the Lord, kill the sin, follow his word. If revival starts with individual transformation, what is one specific step that you need to take in your life? What does it look like in your life to turn to the Lord? What area of sin in your life do you need to kill? And how can you follow the word this week? Your faith has got to become your faith. You can't ride it on the coattails of anyone else. You've got to own it for yourself. Eternal things are far more important than temporary pleasure. Josiah lived for that. Jesus lived for that. And God calls us to live for that, even if it's difficult. When God changes your life, it's not just for your benefit. It's for the benefit of everyone around you. And so as God has changed you, he wants you to impact others. That is how Jesus lived. That is how Josiah lived. And we must destroy sin completely, not just set it aside. Let's make God's word our standard. Let's kill the sin and let's turn to him. Enjoy your time of personal application, meditation, and discussion. We'll do this again next week.